everyone. We are so excited to be gathered here for our conversation today. So I am Allie Hammond. I'm our marketing manager here with Virtuous. Just wanted to go ahead before we get started with our conversation. I just wanted to cover a few ground rules for everyone. So feel free to jump into the chat, ask any questions. We want this to be an interactive conversation today. So we really want to be able to answer all of your questions around, building a year-end campaign and what that looks like to be successful. And if you're already doing that, and if you want to optimize it, we'd love to hear all of your questions. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We also have a really cute little emoji button at the bottom, and it just pops up with a bunch of hearts or there you go. It just looks so cute. I don't know why on the screen, but feel free to use that. This session will be recorded and it will be sent tomorrow to everyone that is on the call today. So feel free to keep an eye out for that as well. But without further ado, I want to pass it over to my good colleague, Eric, and to introduce himself and to kick us off with our special guest today.
Awesome. Thank you, Allie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever everyone is coming in from around the globe. We are so excited to have this conversation today with Virtuous, with our friends from CauseMic, to talk about year-end fundraising campaign plans. I mean, gosh, we got to get started on this now, right? It's September and it's so close to the end of the year. So I'm super excited. I think it's a timely conversation to be able to have that. If you haven't had the opportunity to get to see me on a webinar or a conversation or from the stage, I'm Eric Tamales. I am a recovering fundraiser. The work you guys do matters. We're here to help. We love supporting our communities, growing generosity. Randomly, I am calling in from a hotel in Dallas, Texas, but my home is Pittsburgh, PA. So that's why I've got this unique background here. So bear with me. This is fantastic. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today. But in order to get the ball rolling, I got to take a step back. Sorry, before we go in that, let's talk about the agenda first. Thank you, Allie. Let's go through the quick agenda. We're going to go through how to do the year-end campaign. We're going to help craft that campaign brief and focus on that core messaging, and then develop the calendar for the end of the year, and even look planning out to next year coming out there. But before we go into that, I'd love to just take a step back and just, I'd take a pause, right? The work we do is hard, and the work, it matters, and we don't do enough of this. And I'm so grateful that everyone is here to join us today on this webinar, taking that time to sharpen the saw. But in order to do so, we need to I kind of focus in on, where did we learn about generosity? Where do we start, in our career, in our passion, supporting our community? Like I said, I'm a kid from Pittsburgh. I grew up watching Mr. Rogers on the television channel on the weekends, being kind to your neighbor and taking care of one another. Ultimately, I learned about it here at the Boy Scouts, learning about how to say, a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, kind, taking care of our community and helping others at all times. And it's been so important to me in my career and my development, focusing in nonprofit. And I wanted to take it further here to Virtuous. And my background, if you've had this conversation before, is I've made over 4,500 face-to-face visits. I've asked a lot of people for contributions to support worthwhile organizations. And this quote always is kind of the bare backbone of what I focus my attention on. It's, let's read it out loud. It's, we have to devise the means of making known the facts in such a way as to touch the imagination of the world. The world is not ungenerous, but unimaginative and very busy. And I think this is a really good quote that leads into my background, as well as this conversation that we're having here today, is folks that didn't answer the phone when I wanted to set an appointment, they weren't ungenerous. They were just busy. When we focus in on the direct response and we're doing year-end campaigns and we're sending mailers or emails or texts or whatever communication channel, just because our volunteers, our prospects, our constituents, our donors aren't opening their mail and responding to us, doesn't mean they're ungenerous. It's just they're busy. And I think this quote goes even a step further, is we're 2023 right now. There's a lot of noise in our space, right? We get an average of 500 emails a day. How much mail is coming in around this time period? This quote is 115 years old. So think when Eglani Jeb was created Save the Children, that was the noise and the craziness and everything that was going on in her space 115 years ago. And I have to share, we have a solution, and we have a great partnership with CauseMic, and we focus in on this here at Virtuous, is this idea of responsive fundraising. We're being told all the time to do more with less, resources as fundraisers. And, and then there's an opportunity to be able to take a step and take a new approach to fundraising. And we have great partners, and I can't wait to share that story with them, or with them, is this idea of responsive. We want to listen to who our donors are. Why are people giving to us? Why are they coming to our website? Why are they coming to our activities? We want to connect with them and create those personal touch points, right? Like, we want to go to where the donors are. We want to listen to where their opportunity is and potentially lead into that next step of suggestion, right? Like, we want to suggest that next ask. It could be a financial ask. It could be to learn more. It could be to download a report. It could be to donate. It could be to give, whatever it might be. But there's some type of suggestion, right? Like, it's like Netflix, right? You watch a television show, Stranger Things. Netflix is listening to us, and when you're completed with the TV show, they're suggesting another series based on your listening and your experience, right? And we ultimately, at the end, we want to learn from that. We as fundraisers don't do enough of testing and validating and doing the things to be able to. Just because we did it last year doesn't mean we have to do it this year. And that's the core mindset of Virtuous. That's our methodology for our technology. And like I said, we have great partners that support our nonprofits partnership-wise. And I want to introduce my friends, Abby and Andrew, to talk a little bit about that and the work they do supporting generosity in nonprofits. Abby?
Thank you. Appreciate that. Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here. I wanted to start off with another quote just about, since today we're going to be talking about, launching and executing your year-end fundraising campaign and what it takes to make that successful. I did want to highlight another quote from CauseMic's latest book, The High Growth Nonprofit, which was written by our CEO, Matt Scott. And if I'll read it real quickly, it states, "A good plan means little without proper execution, and vice versa." So a good plan means nothing without proper execution. So as you know, living in the nonprofit space, we do a lot of planning and a lot of executing, year over year. But without that synergy between the two and a guide or something to guide you, your growth tends to be limited. So with this in mind, our hope today is that you can utilize this structured framework that we're going to be presenting to serve as that North Star to help you achieve the fundraising success this year end and moving forward. Next slide, please. Thank you. Before we dive into the details of building an effective year-end plan or a campaign, there are a few high-level questions you should be asking when evaluating your fundraising campaign. And I refer to these as the 3 M's. First, is it memorable? Is that experience, that donor experience, that constituent experience positive? Is it seamless? Is your donation process easy? And there are no barriers to making that gift. Does it leverage humor, nostalgia? Is it heartwarming content? Are we tapping in to the heartstrings of the individual? And are we giving them a meaningful experience? One campaign years ago, when I was working with a nonprofit, just want to give you an example of kind of leveraging humor and making it meaningful. This is one campaign that I have yet to forget. It leveraged humor very well. So it was back in the time when the Game of Thrones was very popular. And this organization was focusing on providing toilets for communities. So they did a whole campaign leveraging or kind of referring to the Game of Thrones. And it was just very captivating. It was very funny. It really grabbed the attention of individuals. And it's something that I remembered. So if there's anything that you can do to leverage humor or to bring that, some element in that kind of allows your organization to stand out and to make it a little bit that much more memorable, definitely try to tap into that and use that. The second M is measurable. How are you defining success? Are your success metrics clearly identified? Do you have specific key performance indicators that you're going to be tracking. Is it your website traffic? Is it the number of donors, your revenue, average gift amount? You really want to make sure that you are identifying those measures or those metrics that you're going to be using to define success, and then also to drive what changes or what modifications you'll make in the future, or even as the campaign is going on, just to help really take that campaign to the next level. And the other item is really whether or not, if you do want to track these things, do you have the tech stack support that enables you to do that tracking? So you can plan and want to track, and measure the number of new donors or the revenue from different channels, but ensuring that you have the proper tracking in place. We want to make sure that we're not overlooking that, to make sure that we are getting the answers that we're looking for. And then finally, the third M is your campaign memorable or manageable? Is it a plan that your team can execute in a high quality way? Really what you want to be able to do is, the key to this is really recognizing your limitations and adjusting accordingly. Do you need to pull in outside resources? Do you need help with development or creation or execution of your campaign? So just being aware of that and what you can and can't do to ensure that you are connecting with your donors and your constituents in a high quality way that will be effective. Next slide, please. So we know the clock is ticking. I think we have 42 business days left until giving or year end kicks off. So that would be sometime in late November is typically when most people start. So what we wanted to do is just get a sense of where you all are at in your year end planning process. So you'll see there's a couple answers up there. And as you're answering this, some of the, something to consider is, yes, it's 42 days away from where we typically kick off a year-end fundraising campaign, but there are things that you could be doing today. So technically you could even be starting now. You could be working on lead generation. You could be working on cleaning up your email list, working to establish matches, and really focusing on cultivation. Let's see where we're at. Do we have the results?
I don't know. Allie, do we have the results?
Yeah, I can't see them.
Yeah.
I think while we wait for those to pop up, just a friendly reminder too for folks, especially my friends that are in smaller organizations, or especially friends that are in like religious nonprofits as well. A lot of times a plan can feel like, is this in alignment with our values? Are we doing something that feels like it could be, especially if you're coming from a religious nonprofit setting, like this idea of like stewardship and generosity and how that integrates with faith and whatever tradition you come from. I came from an entire career in religious nonprofit settings. And so I remember we always would struggle a little bit with getting folks to commit to a plan and to be a part of one, because it felt like, oh, people should be doing this. But the reality is this is an opportunity for pastoring. And so coming up with a plan that makes sense in your setting is actually doing good ministry. And I would say for everyone, no matter what size nonprofit you're at, again, the idea of being manageable is such a big one. And if you do not have a plan today, this thing can scale. Everything we're talking about is descriptive, not prescriptive. So take what you can. As an old pastor friend used to say, chew the meat and spit out the bone. If you can't do it, don't do it. And if you can do it, great, because anything in addition to what you've done before is progress.
Yeah, one of our themes at CauseMic is progress, not perfection. So as long as you're always moving forward and doing the best that you can and learning from that, you're in a good place.
And for the quick poll results, sorry about the technical difficulty there, guys, but we've got quite a heavy mix. So the majority of people are in the just started brainstorming and still deciding on a concept. But we also have a few that are in the other buckets as well that haven't even started thinking about it yet, or they have, and a few others already have their detailed campaign plan. So quite the mix.
That's great. Kudos to those that already have the majority of their details ironed out. That's very impressive for this time of year. Given the volume of work, that we all are aware of, that we need to complete to conceptualize, to organize and create and execute a campaign, and at the same time juggling all of the other responsibilities that are on our plates, we technically could declare year-end kind of as an emergency event that we might approach, excuse me, as like a disaster response. So it's definitely essential to have a reliable and tested plan in place for execution. So that's what we want to share today. And of those key elements that are required, we will be covering the campaign brief, core messaging, as well as the communications calendar. So we'll start off with the campaign brief. These three documents, or these three pieces, all complement one another. But I would say that the campaign brief is really your first step in planning. And this is the primary documentation that outlines the 6 components that are listed on this slide. So the objectives and goals, the campaign concept, the timing, key messaging, audiences, and channels. This is a living and breathing document. It will be an iterative process, and it will likely take a few working sessions to hone. And one key important element to remember is that it's not just one person who owns this, because you have a full team, and your team may be 1 or 2 people, but you do have a full team of individuals that you want to ensure that you're getting their input across the team, that they're aware of the details and the things that are needed, and that it's a group effort. The other 2 documents, the communications brief, the communications calendar, and the core messaging, these other supporting documents would link to this primary document. And this document doesn't have to be anything really fancy. It's really as simple as a Word or Google Doc. Typically, they'll have, you'll have sections for each of those different areas that are listed below. With respect to identifying your goals, we will want to partner with those individuals that pull data. We want to look at data from the last few years to identify ultimately how much we want to raise and what budget we have associated for it. The things that you want to be looking at when you're, kind of doing that data discovery on past campaigns is what worked and what didn't work in the past. Maybe you used a specific channel, Facebook, and you didn't get, many donations off of that. You put a lot of time and effort into it. So we don't want to put that time and effort into it this year. What do we want to do? What else do we want to do differently from previous years? Really, the main key for this would be to determine whether or not the goal is realistic based on your donor's past giving history. So we have, in a lot of work with our clients, we do meet with clients that they want to double their revenue in a year, which is a great aspiration. But the question really boils down to, okay, you want to double this. Well, how are you going to do it? Do you have the capacity, or do you have, enough individuals, or major donors or corporate sponsors to help you get to that point? Because if you don't, or if that's not a strong suit for your particular organization, we're going to need to realign what that goal is and what, financially what we can raise, what revenue we can raise. The other item we want to talk about is, particularly what are those audiences, and breaking down where those funds come from, literally, ideally down to the dollar, projected revenue that you expect for those individual audiences.
That might be hard to come up with at times.
Mhm.
And we just want to acknowledge that like some of y'all are thinking like, how do I do that math? Is there an Excel formula that will do that for me? Please help me, dear, oh my gosh, and so at least that was me when I was first doing it. Maybe y'all are healthier than I am, but I think the key here again is like, what can we pull off here? Because what we're doing is throwing our Legos on the table and we're seeing what the heck we can even build. And you won't be able to build the same thing every year, and nor should you, right? If we're growing our revenue goals, or if we are working with different pieces, or shoot, if some Legos got real beat up or lost along the way, like pour one out for Twitter. Some of y'all are finding that that's probably not where we're going to invest our time anymore versus some other platforms. Like, this is your moment just to see what you got. So this is not an evaluation of what's worked, like what you've done well or poorly necessarily, as much as we're looking at what works and what didn't work. Like try and see the difference there as you're doing it. It's not a reflection of you. It's a matter of just saying, what do I got to work with? And now I'm going to get it done. And so when you're dealing with those audiences in particular, I would just add in that, like, you may not be able to calculate what your projected revenue is for whatever the reason may be, even if it's just capacity. So just be clear on who those audiences are at bare minimum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, really about identifying opportunity. So you definitely want to, look at it in a positive light as well. Like, where can we grow? Where can we expand? And what can we manage if we do that? If we, and can we manage that? Next slide.
This is such good feedback. I love this stuff, guys.
Yeah, thank you. There are a few things that we just want to make sure that we cover that should be prioritized. First is, execution. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, is, can we execute with excellence and high quality? And again, that's determining whether or not it's manageable. Do you have the budget, the resources, and the time to support it? And like Andrew and I have been saying, you can, as you look at this, you can scale up or scale back. You definitely want to make sure that you are reviewing a punch list of tasks that you have to do in order to accomplish this. Can that work be done in-house or not? And this is where, third-party vendors like CauseMic or Virtuous can come in and assist if you need some assistance with that. The other area where I think that is often overlooked and typically takes the most time are your assets. It is essential to create a list of all the things that are needed. So your hero slides for your homepage, your unique donation pages, the emails, the email contents, any graphics associated with that. It could be videos. It could be a ton of things, just depending upon, what story you want to tell and how you want to tell it. But yes, this asset list serves as that punch list, and it has to be completed before that project can be executed. And then last but not least really is audience segmentation. We've talked about this a little bit already, but we do want to make sure that we are including them and addressing them in a fashion that models their experience with your organization. I would say some organizations, things to just watch out for, some organizations do tend to get caught up in segmentation and they may over segment. And this can really complicate the process of tracking and executing that campaign, particularly if your content management system is not integrated with your marketing system. That's a lot of manual work, creating those lists, exporting them, importing them, and then sending out those emails. So just making sure that your segmentation is feasible, that you'll be able to track it. So you really want to just be thoughtful in identifying the challenges of your audiences or the particular audiences that you're considering reaching out to.
Well, the cool thing about that too, Abby, that I'd let you take a pause to get a drink. The opportunity, the fact that Virtuous, for those that are on Virtuous or those that are considering Virtuous, all of those pieces are holistically talk to one another. So you are able to segment and email and communicate and tag in an appropriate manner to be able to make it a lot easier for you, rather than having disparate systems and all the different components. We try to make it as easy as possible for, like you just said, meeting the donors where they are and be able to take folks on that donor journey.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Andrew, was there anything else you wanted to?
There's so much we could talk about audience segmentation, and I think some of it relates more to the calendar. So I'm going to save some of that for then.
Okay, yeah.
It'll be riveting, I promise.
All right, well then let's jump to the next part of the, actually, we did want to do another poll and just get a sense of how, in general, are you segmenting your donor audience today?
And just to define terms there, channel is referencing like where you're communicating with them, right? So like, is our audience based off of like social media, or even more, narrowly defined as like Facebook versus Instagram versus whatever? Is it just the interest area of your programming? We have 3 major pillars, and we've got different folks that are interested in each. Maybe restricted giving is a big part of how you work. Or giving level being like, are they, a mass market donor? Are they a major donor? Are they a corporate donor? Are they just a subscriber and haven't donated yet? Or you ain't doing none of that yet, and now's the time to start ideating.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ruth, more than one. I want to see your campaign brief later, because I bet it's a fun one. Sweet deal. So we can't see it just yet, Alec.
So we've got, sorry, not sure what's going on with these, but popping on here real quick, we've got again a good bit of mix, but most of them are at the segmenting at the giving level. So about half of people are segmenting there, and then second to that is interest area, then followed by channel, and then some other people don't know.
Sweet deal. Well, it makes sense, right? The giving level is the most common that we see with a lot of clients, and usually what we start with recommendation. I see some of y'all are saying we do more than one of those. Totally feasible. Obviously, the more cross sections we build in, the more complex and targeted our communication can be. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't work, right? May be worth a try, may not be. You have to make that call on your own, given the inputs that you got going on. But in any of these cases, what we're doing is pulling from core messaging to tell a unified story. And so that's the next deliverable that we want to talk about, which is just, this is your one-stop shop for your campaign's narrative. This is a document, and all 3 of these, by the way, are just straight up documents. I don't want you to think that like CauseMic has this like proprietary, like really fancy way that we would deliver it to you. I mean, I think it looks nice. I have a bias there, but like, we're straight up like, this is a doc. This is nothing fancy. Y'all are capable of doing this, no doubt, right? And so even if you were using a Word doc from Windows 95 back in the day, you're still good. This is where we capture a narrative. This is where we capture what we are going to say in such a way that everybody who is involved in this process, even if you're a team of 1, you are all pulling from the same storyline. Sometimes when we're talking about the nature of our work, we all have a bit of a different angle. We all have a different bias based off of the way that we have interacted and experienced really the world, how we came to know the organization, what we are interested in, personal like passions of ours that drive what we do, what we believe in, what we care about. All of those things over time, inch by inch, begin to bias the way that we talk about something. And that's where our messaging can get pretty disparate. And so having a central document that we're all pulling from, including some grab and go items, end up saving us a bunch of time, reduce stress, help us be more efficient. And again, even if you're only the only person that's ever going to look at this document, you have a central point of reference to make your life easier when you need to put some random piece of collateral together for a one-off thing even. Like, this is about doing the work up front to save you hours and hours of time on the back end. So there's 4 major components that we'll look at here at this next slide. Oh, no, we won't. We'll look at this. There's 3 here. There is 4. The main one is telling your story. So I would say before you even jump into these items, building your case for support is usually 1 to 2 paragraphs. They can be meaty paragraphs, but we're really not talking more than 2. If you go more than 2, you're probably whiling a little bit, and I wouldn't recommend it. Longer than that is usually saved for organizational core messaging. So you could apply this same approach to your organization, but think about how you hear stories. And given the fact that your time is limited, kind of the point that Eric was making at the top here, your people's time is limited too. And so tell your story succinctly. It can still be moving. It can still drive excitement and love for your work and empathy. But I swear y'all can do it in 1 to 2 paragraphs. Being concise is a true art form that will serve you in the long run.
Well, and I'd add to that too, Andrew. I mean, coming from small and large shops, I think this is like one of the most critical pieces. It's the foundation, it's the backbone, it's everything else from our messaging. And I love to use the analogy of, like, remember Finding Nemo, where, you know, it's a whole flock of seagulls and there's a fish above it, right? And like everyone's like, mine. It's like we do this. It's my donor, it's my annual fund, it's my Giving Tuesday, it's my volunteer, all these things. But like contextually, the donor is the fish and they only see that core message. So if we freely share this case for support across our teams, whether it's 3 people or 5 or 500 people that work for us, it's able to pass that opportunity and core messaging as a brand, as a marketing, to the entire donor experience.
Yeah, I was going to add to that, saying, you know, not just for, you know, you want to do this for year end, but it's also, you know, taking a step back and looking at your communications throughout the year. Like, if you can create this core messaging that carries throughout the year and link, you know, that message from one campaign to the other, so there's that persistent theme. That is, you know, that's another additional way that you can utilize that to just keep that consistency and have a go-to for the year.
Mm-hmm. So 3 major components that follow that storytelling. And Ruth, I think we'll be able to answer some of your question in this. Context statements is the first part of that grab and go bin that you add in here. And so 5 to 10 supporting statements that provide context around the problems your organization is committed to solving. These are quick, easy. There's not a character limit. Think just what is something that you would be able to say out loud. I often tell my students when they're like, I adjunct at a university, and when you are a freshman and sophomore in college, your writing is still, you know, being refined and getting better. And I always encourage them, like, read your papers out loud before you turn them into me, because you can actually tell, like, is this palatable? Like, can somebody process this? Because even though we're reading it and not listening to it, we still are processing in the same amount of time, right? Maybe there's some slight differences. I'm no scientist, but I think that's just a good rule of thumb. Read it out loud. Does it feel like you can consume that? And does it make sense to me? Supporting stats. These can be internal stats that you have about your work, or they could be external ones that you source from any kind of reputable group. Could be government, could be other nonprofits, could be anything that would support the context statements that you just wrote. And always link your sources just so that you have those for quick reference in case somebody's asking where you pulled it from. It's always great to, like, obviously cite sources if it makes sense and you have the space to do it in your work. I would especially recommend you do that on any kind of like major and corporate donor, like one-pager type things that you're doing. Like, if you were going to make a case for support for how they can make a difference and how they can serve themselves and your organization, shoot, back it up with what you got, right? Make sure that they're able to see, like, this is not just lip service, right? This is not just marketing speak. This is cold hard facts. Let's move them forward, right? And then calls to action, another 5 to 10 statements that include the call to action to donate, and make sure that this fits, you know, underneath and nests well underneath that case for support narrative that you've written. Feature the impact that your donors are going to make possible. And if you've got a matching gift or a partner, try and reflect that in some of these statements. It doesn't have to be in all of them, because remember, you're creating a grab and go bin for yourself to make life easier down the line. But make sure that those are in there too, just to keep things a little bit easier on yourself as you continue to be drafting new messages for different collateral, for different channels that you're promoting on. And then when everything is said and done here, you've got a very complete document to serve you moving forward. So to circle back here and talk about it at a macro level, and to kind of address the question that Ruth had left in the chat there, are we showing need or are we featuring impact? You're doing both. And you, at the same time, can't accomplish everything. So focus in on what it is you're trying to tell here. Is this a campaign that you are trying to make about your entire organization that's explaining at a macro level what you do? Are you focusing in on specific programming? Is there a particular story that you're trying to tell that is connected to your overall work? In both of those cases, you are going to have to not only tell your story in terms of the why you exist, what you're trying to accomplish, what the problem even is, but then, yeah, also proving that you have a solution that actually works, right? We are not obviously owed any gifts, and so we have to be clear. Focus on clarity, focus on how you are meeting a goal in tangible ways, center human impact. If you're focused on environmental work, even still incorporating human impact in your story is really critical. We do this with Surfrider Foundation all the time. They are helping protect our coasts around the United States, and they do amazing work. However, people are helping accomplish that. So including those stories, that's what we are connecting with. We are built for relationship. And so trying to use that in our storytelling is really critical. Cool. Abby?
Yeah, I think, once you have that core messaging, that's where we're going to jump into the communications calendar. And this is really where that strategy comes to life. You need to be delivering your message on 3 or more channels and have multiple, probably like 7 to 11 touch points with a donor throughout the campaign. And so what you're building here with the communications calendar is really a project plan to task out all of the work. So you're really specifying, again, it's a simple document, but you're really specifying the audiences, the segmentation, the preferred channel, the interest. So literally you could have a spreadsheet that has the month and then the day of the month. And then on that same line, you're indicating, these are my target audiences. This is my CTA. This is the overall theme. This is who's going to do it. And this is even the time that it goes out. So you have literally a day-by-day guide as to what needs to be done. And everyone, whether you're sending emails and someone else is doing the social media, everybody is on the same page and the timing is aligned. It's also an opportunity to include like hypotheses or tests. So you could start small and experiment with whether or not, let's say, we're going to look and see whether a humanistic approach to the ask or kind of the hero approach to an ask, which one works better. So you could do smaller tests like that and include those. If you want to do that, you can include those on the campaign calendar as well. And it's really, with that, you're really just embracing that concept of failing forward. It's no big change if you don't want to do any of it. And if you don't want to risk too much doing testing, but you can always add that element if you're comfortable with it.
I know, Abby, one of the things that I loved when I was in the space was sitting in there. It was like pulling in, I worked for, some volunteer-led organizations. So I looked on the calendar, when is Volunteer Day? When's National Volunteer Month? And being able to take our core messaging, as you just mentioned, to focus around larger things that are going on in the human space, right? Like what's going on in our world around us. So focusing on Giving Tuesday, year end, all those different components, I think matter at a high macro level, but at least, like you're just saying, get the ball rolling and start building out that communication calendar today and start doing something on that journey.
Yeah. And what's great about, next slide, please. But what's also great about having this calendar that's so laid out is things aren't always going to go as you expect them to. And with this, you have a clear outline, so you can shift your plans and, just make adjustments without really missing a beat, because it's very easy to see full picture of what that experience is going to be, and how you might change it, and how it will affect, those things in the future as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a few things that we just want to make sure that you prioritize when you're considering your calendar. One of the things is, I would say email is your main line of communication, but you do just want to ensure that you're building a surround effect. So what other channels are you using? Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, like what other channels are you sending those messages through as well, just so that it's resonating, not just in one space, but in all of the spaces that your constituents exist. Emails still are the number one. They continue to convert. So you just want to, 14%, I think it's 14% of all online revenue in 2022 comes through email, or last year came through email. So you want to make sure that you're prioritizing emails, and then consider the lead time going into year end. So you want to just make sure that that you have enough time, that you're giving yourself the time, and you're actually including asks, but also cultivation. You just don't want to be pelting your donors with an ask and ask and ask. There's a balance between the give and the asks. So you just want to make sure that you're doing both, and you're doing it with a consciousness. So what else belongs? Next slide, please. Perfect. Thank you. So what belongs in my calendar? We've already talked about this a little bit: the who, the when, the where, the what. So it's literally, again, just leveraging your spreadsheet skills to get all of that information in one place. You are not including the details of the email content. It's really just high-level messaging. So an example of that would be, let's say, a week before Giving Tuesday, your high-level message is, in a newsletter, maybe it's the newsletter or an item, and then a save the date. And that's all you need in there. And then it's when you go and you look at the specific content for that particular email, that's where you get all the detail. And then you're also just wanting to make sure, like, what I am providing, is that of value to the recipient? So you might be, wanting to send out an invite to some individuals, but it's not quite the right choice to, send that invitation via social media. So you just want to make sure that I'm not going to put my effort into it, and you leverage that channel for that, or that particular content, because it doesn't apply to the timing or the audience, things like that. In addition, one other thing that is important to include that I didn't mention previously, but last but not least, you also want to make sure that you are including those audiences that you would want to exclude. So if there's a particular, let's say you are sending an email out, but you don't want to include monthly donors because you have a special ask or a special communication for them, you want to make sure that not only are you identifying who you're including, but who you are not including, or who you won't be sending that particular communication to.
Yeah, I think let's just when it comes to discerning what to include too, let's talk about segmentation really quickly as it comes to your audiences, because I think it's important we recognize that not everything requires segmentation. So think about what you're actually trying to message to somebody. Does addressing them by the way that you've identified your audiences is there enough to actually say there? So a lot of times we will do something as basic as switching out like a sentence or two with certain email communications that acknowledge, like, hey, you give monthly, and that is critical to the work that we do here at X nonprofit. Or acknowledging, like, this is the perfect time for you to get involved for the first time by supporting us financially. Right? There's moments there where identifying that could be really helpful as it folds into the larger narrative. There are some moments where actually creating a full-on custom email for a specific audience makes sense. Maybe we want to draft an entire message to our monthly givers, acknowledging in depth our support, our appreciation of their support, and inviting them to participate above and beyond. And based on what we know about these folks, who they are, how they behave, maybe we have one-on-one relationships with them because of the size of the audience. We have the ability to now incorporate all of that into the narrative that we're constructing to deliver them on any particular message. All of this stuff is worth acknowledging at a very high level as a cue for you to be thinking about in your calendar. You don't need to worry about getting lost in too many of the details, but this is where it all begins to be, kind of cascade from there. And we have that ripple effect of what Abby's saying about maybe that's an audience then that we need to exclude because this message could potentially offend, like maybe they've already given this year, or within, let's say, a certain time period prior to the ask that I'm about to make. Does it make sense to ask more from them? Or would we want to give them a more customized ask that makes sense? Going message by message using that kind of filter is going to allow you to be able to create a calendar that's effective. Then once you have it all mapped out, do your wish list, do the whole dang thing. Then go back and say, all right, but can we pull it off? And then from there, you can start to whittle it back and think about what's appropriate. You might just gray out those items so that you can come back to it and say, hey, if I have capacity, if I do have time, let's go for it. But just be cognizant of the fact that like, hey, we have some things that we're going to prioritize, and then we have kind of the it's gravy if we get to it kind of section.
Perfect. And then next slide, please. The last thing. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought there was another slide, but there's just a few other things that I wanted to mention. Is we've already talked about like the balance of cultivation, communication, and the ask, but we also want to note that in that document, in that communication calendar, you also have the opportunity to include who that message is coming from. Sending messages emailed from a real person versus just sending it through your marketing platform. Some of those opportunities, particularly if it's from one person, say the CEO or the board member or something along those lines, that can deepen that connection. So just thinking about the sender and the audience as well is something else that you would want to include in that. And then the last thing really is, what are your existing communications? If you do have new donors coming in, are you going to pause the new donor series until after the year end and after you do the thank you and what's happening in the new year, or your newsletters? Are you going to pause those because we don't want to do too many communications during that time? So just think about those as well. So that's it.
Well, and I also want to just take through a step, like to be able to map that donor journey. It's like you're talking our language, right? Like you want to take a step back and create these personas, like to find out the involvement, the intent, their interest with our organization. You're basing out this next steps of what we're going to be able to do, figure out those actions to connect directly to our personas. Again, I'm a big fan. You can see some of the stuff that I'm responding to in our chat. I'm a huge fan of multi-channel. I think the opportunity to hit multiple different levels and communicating and visiting the donors where they are is important, because we can be able to do it, especially like you said, Abby, like especially coming from like a CEO or someone else, who's the right person, where's the right channel. That's the core tenet of responsive fundraising. It's listening, right? And one of my favorite things that I don't think we do enough of is just surveying our donors and our constituents and asking them, how do you want to be communicated with? Do you want to be text? Do you want to be mail? Do you want the carrier pigeon to come to your house? Like, what is the best way and avenue to be able to get that? And Allie, I'll go to the next slide. I'll show you what was some of those things that we were looking through of like, what an opportunity to be able to have the multi-channel experience is, just imagine for a second that, Lisa came to one of our events, whether it was a homecoming event or came to a food bank of like a volunteer capacity. An hour after the event, she automatically gets a thank you email with that survey, right? Like in the survey is, what do you want to do, Lisa? Do you want to learn more? Do you want to download some more content? Or do you want to go visit our website and donate? A day later, Andrew, you probably pick up the phone because you're a good gift officer to say, hey, thank you so much, Lisa, for coming to our event. We really greatly appreciate it. And then 2 days later, based on her actions in that survey, she wanted to learn more about our organization. So she went to our website because we sent her a text with the website to learn more. She actually donated a day after, and then 2 weeks later, she gets a postcard in the mail saying thank you, closing the loop, being very donor centric, right? Like Penelope Burt says, you know, focus on impact, focus on the knowledge and where the gift went. And we do this in a hyper personal, multi-channel way. And we as fundraisers try to do this, but we can't, right? And there's opportunities, challenges out there, and we hope we can be able to do text and put all this stuff in there. But it's very hyper personal and multi-channel here. But what happens if we go another step and think through other journeys that we can take down, right? Like we've got Stephen, who is a new donor journey series, and he's got that mail, email, text. You know, Shivani here has a lapsed donor journey, right? Someone who hasn't given in the last 13 months is a Libunt or a Cybont, whichever way you want to look at it. Charlie is downloading one of our impact reports online. Everyone has their own persona. Jenna, I mean, how many of us are busy and we're going to a Target website and put something in our cart or Walmart or Nordstrom or whatever it might be. And then 2 days later, we got a phone call or an email saying, hey, did you forget something in your cart? Right? Like those are things that we can do to be able to help bring back our donors. And, you know, life is busy and they're not ungenerous. They just forgot to hit the submit and complete the donation to our organization. And I love all of this because it all holistically comes together to help support it. And I think I love all this too, guys. Abby, Andrew, this has been fantastic. Ali, is there another slide? Doesn't look like it. So, but this has been fantastic. Yeah, Ali's coming off.
That was great. Thank you all so much for sharing. We do, there is one other slide. We do have a special gift for you all. So Abby and Andrew have been so gracious, and they have decided that for everybody who's attending today, we actually are going to be offering you a free book bundle. So you do get access to the high growth nonprofit book, as well as the responsive fundraising book that talks about the methodology and everything like that Eric referred to earlier. So you guys can actually download that as well. But other than that, we, if we have any questions or anything like that, we would love to go ahead and answer those. I do want to touch on one thing that you guys said, though, as well, as far as like segmenting goes, that, another really great way going back into the responsive like methodology, but like going back to the first step in that and like listening to your donors, like, what does that mean? Like, what does listening look like? And that could look like so many different things, like surveys, really understanding the why behind the gift. And I think that's another great place to kind of tie into like the segmentation part, is segmenting based off of your audience and like why they gave in the first place, because you could have two different donors that gave for two completely different reasons. And I think that is another great place to start when you're thinking about, how do I segment my donors? How do I, like being able to craft messaging based off of why somebody might give to your organization, and starting backwards there as well. Let's take a look. Let's see, do we have any
questions?
Let's see. It looks like we've answered them all throughout the presentation. Yeah, let's see. Any other questions?
Andrew, Abby, this has been incredible, tactical. I hope it gave everybody assets and opportunities to focus in on your end. It's one of those things for me as a fundraiser. It's like, if we're starting now, we're already 42 days to the end of the year, like, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's like already behind the 8 ball. So like, I hope that this was able to be able to connect and help others to grow generosity toward the end of the year. I know everyone here, Abby, Andrew, Ali, myself, we're all available. We're all on LinkedIn. We're all able to communicate. You have our QR code. Please reach out. We're here to help. You guys, the work you guys are doing, like I said, and it keeps going back to, matters. We're in your court. We're here to help you. Throw up the bat signal and we're there. So good luck.
I say too, so to get access to the book, you can go to the resources tab, and both of those links will be in there, and you can get those free copies for you. Also, if you'd like to schedule any time with Abby and just have any, just grab coffee, get to know each other, hang out, but talk more about your fundraising plan, your year end, what you can do to make it better, or even just in general, just around fundraising planning. Schedule that time with her. So she is definitely willing to help and just a great person to talk to just in general. So feel free to book time with her. Abby, Andrew, is there anything else you'd love to add?
I think I just want to expose that Abby will not be drinking coffee like that emoji that just popped up says. She's a tea drinker only, I found out. And so we're working on rebuilding our bond right now.
Yes.
I should have put the T one in there. I didn't even.
It's okay. I can still click the emoji. I did just want to say thank you to the both of you for having us. Really appreciate this opportunity. It's just really been great working with you, and just definitely looking forward to continuing that partnership.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for your time. Yep. Everybody, thank you for hopping on. We'll send out this recording with all the links as well. Thank you both so much for your time, for coming on here today and speaking to this. So really, really excited. And thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.